Okay, then welcome anyone listening, which is nobody. But I do want to welcome Mr. Dom today. How are you doing, Dom?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good, man. How about you?
Doing pretty good. We're in the midst of Corona and whatever else going on, and interestingly enough, I got an email from one of my professors not too long
Right.
ago. What's that?
We're supposed to be calling it the Tom Hanks disease.
Oh, the Tom Hanks disease. My bad. Yeah, for sure. He's not real anymore. Apparently,
Wait, what?
I saw this whole thread thing about how Tom Hanks's performance on SNL was either staged or it's like not him. It's like a deep fake or something.
Wait, a recent performance he did?
Yeah. He like opened for SNL, and people were saying it's either him in prison and he's like filming it in jail, or it's like not him at all and it's like a weird fake actor. I can send you the link. It's really weird.
Okay, I wonder when did he go into prison and shit? I don't know, man.
Well, it's been like kind of the whole idea is that it's been under wraps because of like the huge pedophile thing going on, and that he had COVID, and they're kind of like, oh, him going to the hospital is him actually going to fucking prison. It's crazy. Yeah, and conspiracy theorists are out here, but like if you watch the video, there's actually decent. Yeah, like if you watch it all, you can kind of see the parts where it might be a deep fake, kind of, because there is some very noticeable like pixelating stuff and like that weird morph effect that happens like around the chin. So, and the hands aren't his hands, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, think about the implications of that though, man. So like, if Tom Hanks is a pedophile, then SNL was like, all right, we're just gonna make a computer generated image of him while he's in prison, just to get it rather than announce to everyone what's going on.
Well, the thing about it is that it's kind of tied to like what's his name, the guy that didn't kill himself.
Epstein. Epstein.
Epstein. Yeah, I was thinking Weinstein as well. No, Epstein, because the whole like pedophile Hollywood pedophile ring thing going on. Apparently, Tom Hanks is part of it, but he's like trying to tell everyone that he's like in prison, and there's a bunch of he like I don't know, conspiracy theory people are out here going crazy because in the skit he like holds up like papers and stuff, and there's things in the background that everyone's like, this means this, and these are the connecting dots that we can go from Tom Hanks is being held hostage in prison to not say anything about, the huge pedophile ring. He doesn't have COVID-19, and they're deep faking. It's not actually him. He's trying to pretend like he's okay and at home, but yeah, I don't know.
I think the main problem with that, like, especially with conspiracy theories like the moon landing and stuff, is like they kind of obfuscate shit. Like, oh, look at this picture, it must be fake, and then they like take one thing that's kind of unsure, and then they use that to leap on this. Oh, well, Kubrick filmed it and all this shit. So I
Hmm.
feel like, yeah, at least with Epstein, like, well, I don't fucking know, but I mean, his death was kind of like skeptical or whatnot. It was like something intriguing about it, but I don't know, man. I just can't jump into that conspiracy tinfoil hat shit. I just feel like there's an element of crazy stuff to it. People on Reddit love doing conspiracy stuff too, though. They're like, there's long ass timelines about X, Y, and this. I don't
Hmm.
know, man.
No, I agree. I feel like the Epstein one is kind of in its own nature because I'm not a huge conspiracy guy by any means, but you don't trust Hillary Clinton, I guess is what I'm getting at. So that, yeah, I mean, he definitely did not kill himself. That was definitely a murder to hide a lot of things. But like you're talking about the moon landing, I was actually watching this video the other day about like the space bubbles, how they show like bubbles coming out of cabins and stuff on like the SpaceX and whatever else, and they're like, these are bubbles because they're underwater. It's all being filmed underwater. I'm like, dude, no, it's not.
Wait, SpaceX. That's what's his name, right? Well, the guy who did Tesla and all that. Is
Oh,
that his program?
I think so,
Uh,
yeah, but it was like a bunch of other stuff too. It was also NASA footage, where they were showing like bubbles of like water or air coming out of it's water coming out of the cabins, but yeah, people are like it's air bubbles underwater. Like, how do you? No, it's not because we have footage of people practicing underwater when they do go to space, because it's very, very similar. But there's a lot more air bubbles underwater. Like it's very noticeable. You're going to be underwater. You'd have to try really fucking hard, have everything super airtight, and they're already doing that because they're in space. But it's anyway. Yeah, that's the tinfoil hat shit. But I think the Epstein stuff's a little bit different. The Tom Hanks things, I don't know. That feels kind of it feels like a mix of the two. So I can't say for sure, but it's interesting, and I'll send it your way because it's wild.
Yeah. You know what? You hear about what's going on with New York and shit? They like busted up a bunch of Jews doing a funeral because of social distancing stuff.
I
It
didn't
looks
hear
really.
that. No, I did hear that New York had a massive problem with COVID-19 because, everyone lives so close together, but that was the last thing I really heard about going on. But what happened with the funeral?
So basically, like, it's kind of different. So Trump, I think, allowed the governors to dictate whether or not there's a government lockdown. So, like, with the Republican ones, they're not usually doing any state measures, but especially for New York, because it's such an enclosed space, I think they started, like, becoming really draconian with the way they're enforcing laws. And there was a funeral going on and was a bunch of Jewish people, and they just basically, a bunch of cops came and they broke it up like, hey, y'all can't be here and stuff. Y'all gotta like, move out of the way, and it looked really bad for them and shit. Cause I don't know, just the government busting up large groups of Jews never looks well, even no matter what,
Yeah,
like
no matter what, yeah. Especially at a funeral, like, yeah. It's kind of like, in lieu of, like, desecrating, like, burial grounds and stuff like that, because I feel like a funeral is something you need to just let people do.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've known people who've died since this and we can't actually do funerals. So, I mean, I could get it kind of way, but it's just like a weird new issue of like a government law. Like, are you allowed to stop this just because these people want to do it? Because I mean, they are like giving the other people. There's a higher risk of them giving the other people the virus, so it is
Not the
part of
dead
the.
guy. The dead guy's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Well, there's like it's my right too. I want to walk outside. So what point becomes infringement and stuff? Yeah.
Right. Man, I was at Walmart yesterday, and I have a mask that my girlfriend's aunt made, so it's like a nice handmade one. Anyway, I was out there with my mask, and only like what I could roughly account for, like 20% of the people at this Walmart had masks on. Everyone else was just walking around like, fuck it, who cares? I'm like, you guys, this is crazy. And then some people go crazy about it. Like, I also at that same Walmart saw a lady in a full hazmat suit. So, no shitting you, yeah. I mean, she was like, I ain't getting sick. Fuck this. I'm like, damn. I mean, that's respect. I respect that. But yeah, it's crazy. Some people are taking it real seriously. Some people are taking it not seriously. And one of my professors has COVID-19 right now, and he recently sent us an email like this morning that said, hey, I have to go to the hospital. I can't finish writing the final, so we're just going to do this thing instead. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is hitting real close, because he's an older guy, he's in his late 50s, so, it's possible. I mean, it's morbid to think about it, but who knows what the fuck could happen. He's at the stage where he has to go to the hospital, and he's in his late 50s, so.
Yeah. Do you think he may be a pedophile in the whole like?
Yeah, his name is actually Tom Hanks. Professor Hanks is coming in to do a lecture today. No, but it's crazy though. Just how close it's hitting, and people still don't really. Some people just still don't care, aren't even trying. At least try, for other people. So
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, you got that element, but at some point, government always like, at what point do you force this and shit? It's pretty crazy. Also, I heard this Chris Cuomo guy everybody's hating on in New York. I don't think he's the governor. I think it's someone else who's related to people in power. Anyway, he was doing this video on CNN. He's like, I'm coming out of the basement now. I'm all good. And he's like this big, like, kind of mob sounding Italian dude. And then there's like footage of a biker or like an account of a biker talking to him outside like a couple days before that. After he was preaching to everyone, well, you gotta stay inside. I'm doing my part and shit. He's just getting like bombed in the press for pretty much being a hypocrite and lying about it and stuff.
I mean, a little bit closer to home, Georgia is reopening a lot of stuff. Governor Kemp decided he's like, fuck it, we're just going to reopen everything. And I've seen, a lot of people being like, reopen these places because I'm selfish and I want to go get a haircut and I want to go to these dumb things. And, I think those people think that Kemp is satisfying them because he listens to the people. But what I've actually seen is that it's trying to make sure that businesses are kind of like they can't really file for anything, during this time. It's like, well, you're still in business because I just reopened the state for you. But that doesn't mean people are going to start leaving. Like, the quarantine isn't lifted. People are still going to stay home. We're not going to be going out as much. If we do, it's terrible. But it's a really messed up way of just securing financial assurance for the state, which is really bad.
Right, right. So do you think like the small businesses, if they were like held under, they shouldn't have the right to reopen? Because I feel like the argument for that would be that like big places like Walmart can stay open, or like if Walmart was put under quarantine, let's say they couldn't close or open up X amount of shops in Georgia, they would be fine because they have the costs, they have enough income to like hold that. But the small businesses, they actually go under this amount of time. So do you think there's like an argument for that to be made?
I think so, yeah. But there's also, how important and how much money are people going to be spending on these things at a time? Like, the music store, let's say, for example, they sell guitars or something. Like, people might not be thinking about that right now, especially since they're not really going to watch shows right now. Movie theaters, like, that's obviously just a bad idea. You're going to gather a bunch of people in one room, like 200 people in a room to sit down for 3 hours and cough around each other. Like, that's just a bad idea. That's a health concern. So I think there's a limit on it, because some things, obviously, like, you can serve food, like a local business can just do curbside pickup. That they'll probably be fine, but some things that are actually truly non-essential, like, you don't need a guitar to live, but that guy needs to sell guitars to live. There needs to be some kind of compensation through the government for these small businesses, but that's not going to happen, especially not, in a red dead state like Georgia. And maybe if you're in like California or something, you might be able to get away with something like that, some form of governmental compensation. But hell, it took us this long to get our stimulus checks, and we only got $1,200, a one-time thing. People in Canada are getting $2,000 a month for this. So
Yeah, crazy amount, dude. Think about how much we spent on that too, trillions in the amount. It's crazy, man. But yeah, I can kind of see your argument. I would be like almost like a diehard. This sounds bad, but I feel like if a person has like a right or a want to do it, they should have the ability to, even if they're like posing a risk to some extent. So if they want to get sick and take the risk, I feel like they have the right to do that to some extent. And then like they will have, or like, well, I guess the hardest part would be them inflicting the sickness to other people. That's
exactly.
where it becomes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the problem. Because, like,
If you just get like sick and not spread it to anyone, I would be for like everything opening and whatnot. But yeah.
One thing that Sweden did, actually, when it first came out, the whole COVID stuff happening globally, what Sweden did was they still let like all the young people and like businesses carry on, but they shielded all the people that were at super high risk of, mortality. So like all the people that were already immunocompromised, all the elderly people, they were like, all of you guys, hardcore quarantine. Here's like hazmat suits for you guys. If you catch it, you're gonna die. Everyone else would probably be fine, and it's kind of like a flu type thing for most people that are decently healthy, young people, and they seem to be doing okay. And they did pretty good at flattening their curve, at least in their country. So and that's what you're getting at, though, about how like if we reopen in America, we risk infecting the elderly people that also want to go buy a new guitar, So.
Yeah. It's a very interesting development too. And I think too, like my aunt who like passed away in a nursing home, right? Like even if those places are closed down, those are just like breeding grounds for the virus. So no matter how you look at it, they're still going to be at risk too. Even if like if one of them gets infected, they don't really have the ability there to like stop the spread of it. So it kind of like sucks either way. Especially too if you got like I don't know hospitalized for something unrelated. I don't know like a broken foot or something that needs immediate care, you at yourself are now at risk because you're in the same vicinity where, the virus gets spread around a lot. Yeah, I don't know, interesting shit.
Right, and actually, that kind of relates to, I teach a couple of labs here, and one of our labs is about Staphylococcus aureus, which is a very common disease, or a very common bacteria that'll get into people. And there's actually, in hospitals and prisons, interestingly, but mostly in hospitals, there's a much higher increased risk of catching it because of not only everyone's in close quarters, but also there's open wounds in hospitals as well as prisons, So obviously something like COVID that's very contagious. Yeah, if you go in just for sprain like a broken ankle or something, or like say like tonsillitis, or you have an appendectomy, like great, now you had to go through this whole surgery, but you're probably also exposed to COVID now. So
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
it's really, you gotta weigh like, okay, well I can just stay at home with a broken leg for a couple months, or weeks, or like try to self medicate, or do I risk going to a doctor and spending money and then getting COVID? So it's really it's a whole screwed up situation. There's so many things, especially if I can't imagine being old right now. Like I'd be terrified every day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's pretty hard if you think about it. Like people who are 80, are almost like an enigma by older standards, in so much
Mm.
as that they weren't really meant to be like around at this point, and they're susceptible to a whole bunch of shit. And it's kind of like, in terms of this, they're very high risk, and they can easily die. So it's definitely interesting. And it's kind of like, human life has gotten to the point where we can extend the life much older, but at the same time, it's like they're at such a high risk. At this point, it's almost like a bad thing to get like this old at this point. I feel like, I don't know.
Right, right. And what's there's really cool case studies about other diseases we've had in the past, so like the SARS outbreak. And I think it was in Hong Kong in like 2013. They were actually very good about trying to stop and prevent COVID, because they had SARS literally like what 6, 7 years ago or something like that. And
Really, was that early ago? I thought it was like in the 90s when that shit happened.
no, it hit
With
it
the
hit
whole,
again. It hit again in like the thousands, and so they were like, no. Whenever COVID came out, they were like, we do not want to deal with this again, because SARS, COVID-19, the flu, and the common cold are all coronaviruses. It's a class of virus, so they all act the exact same way. So they knew how to prevent it. They knew what to do. So Hong Kong was very, even in the midst of their whole independence thing going on, they still had a very good system of public health to be like, we don't want this to be as big of a problem as it's going to be. And they've been a good example of a country that's been very good at responding to the crisis, I guess.
right, right, interesting. I actually didn't know this about Hong Kong because it's like a very capitalist kind of country, right? A lot of trade goes in and out of it, but they were part of Britain. Britain ruled them all the way up to the 80s before they left and became part of China. That kind of blew my mind.
Huh. Yeah, and I know that, I mean, I don't know really what it's looking like now because, we have
Yeah,
COVID happening. But with the whole, like,
yeah.
free Hong Kong shit, like, I wonder how that's looking right now in the midst of a global pandemic, especially with, like, they're so near, there's also shit with, like, North Korea going on. So, like, there's a bunch of shit going on in Asia right now. I don't know what the hell's happening.
Yeah, yeah. I just watched this whole documentary on the Tiananmen Square massacre that happened like 89. That shit
Hmm.
was brutal. And like all the students were protesting. And basically the government got an order to clear the square by 6 a.m. the next morning. And there's still some footage of this. Most of the like reporters though, they get their stuff like confiscated by authorities, but there's some footage of them just getting like gunned down and massacred. And like all of them were like all the students were killed up in the next morning, and then all the parents start trying to come in, like seeing if their kids are dead, and then like the Chinese authorities are like, all right, we're gonna start opening firing on you.
Oh my
They just
god.
start firing on the parents. Yeah, and then the ambulance tries to come. I actually watched footage of them like shooting down the ambulance, and they just left the square quarantined for like no people like to enter, and kind of like the state of president, like you can't disobey the state and whatnot. But it was very interesting too, because the Communist Party at this point, they were like hardliners and people trying to reform it. And the people trying to reform it were on the side of the students. But at this point, what the students were demanding was basically impossible for such a short amount of time. So the hardliners were like, look, this is bad. And they basically killed all of them. And all the reformers basically got destroyed by that. And China actually became more authoritarian because of that. So it shows, I don't know, the government there is just really crazy.
Yeah, what's interesting in the wake of the Hong Kong stuff going on, you're talking about Tiananmen Square. I mean, the Chinese government, for a long time has tried to be like, oh no, Tiananmen Square didn't happen. Like they'll like block it off the computers in China, like you can't access it on the internet. And a funny thing during the Hong Kong, freedom, independence thing happening, anytime someone would join, like I play Dota, anytime like there'd be like a Chinese character name join, like the enemy team would spam like 1989 Tiananmen Square and like a bunch of Chinese stuff, and it's like free Hong Kong. And the idea is that if anything is mentioned of Tiananmen Square on a Chinese-related server, that it crashes it. And sometimes it did. Like, sometimes that whoever the Chinese character person, if they were on a Chinese server, it would just crash the game for them and they disconnect.
That would fuck up the Chinese player. I feel bad for.
It's pretty funny, though. Like,
but yeah, man, can you imagine that, like, being one of your parents and, like, having it be covered up by the state? Like, the whole massacre just didn't happen, just being gaslit. That's, like, the worst part about it, I feel like.
I agree. At least, like, face the fact that you did this horrendous, terrible, just awful thing. At least write it down. But, I mean, it's interesting that you were able to watch a documentary about it, because I guess here, if we have the information, we want to discuss it. But in China, it's like hard line, no, you cannot discuss it. It did not happen. These people died, but, it's like a blot. Like, how did they die? I don't know. We definitely didn't shoot them.
Well, yeah, they'll actually use the pretext, like, they were actually the ones starting and whatnot. And what they do is they call them revolutionaries, and then they'll, like, basically fabricate a bunch of lies for them and whatnot.
Huh.
And, the students actually got, like, the ones who started it, got, like, arrested and stuff, and they got executed and whatnot. And they'll do that on TV just to, like, make sure no one else kind of gets that frame of mind, or at least speak about it openly. I guess to some extent it's worked, because, I mean, China's maintained this. Well, they're not as communist as they used to be, but they've maintained this communist state for such a long time. And, so is North Korea too, where they've had this authoritarian regime which does not allow any dissidence of the mind trying to speak up of the common people. It just kind of baffles me how that's kind of, how they'd be able to maintain it. Especially, in lieu of all this stuff too. I feel like cracks like that, at least with the Free Hong Kong, become like more apparent when it's occurring. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's only working so well for them because of their manufacturing and because of the fact that many countries are heavily in debt to China. If they were not, the main proprietor of a lot of items globally, I don't think it would really work. The only reason I think it's working in North Korea, I mean, as far as, you want to say working is in North Korea, is because China, they supplement them with, like, leftover items that they have to be like, oh, well, here, we know you need help, and they're their only trading partner. But if your trading partner is the country that makes the most items in the world and has, I believe, if not the highest population, then the second highest. I don't know how many India has right now, but they just have more people and they make more things, so they can kind of dictate how they want to run their shit. Like, if they were just like some random little country, that decided it wanted to be this heavily communist, almost dictator-like regime kind of thing going on, it might collapse on itself because they don't have the infrastructure to support it. But China definitely does, and I think that's why it's working so well for them.
Well, yeah, you got like a good example of that, like Taiwan, right? When Mao Zedong and all of them were coming to power, a lot of the people weren't into that, fled to Taiwan.
Right.
Yeah, and they've kind of, although, economically they're pale in comparison. But yeah, there's an interesting point too with China, because like some parts of it are capitalist, like their industry and whatnot, what they develop, because they have like a whole big like a open source movement too with their tech, and there's like certain parts of China that have like grown gigantically recently, and they're like these giant cities, kind of like these businessmen making the way up, but it's kind of interesting because it's not, it goes kind of against the whole grain of the communist, everyone is equal and whatnot. I guess this is kind of weird at this part too, like I've read that Dao Jinping, after Mao Zedong died, like opened some parts of the country up to be capitalist and allowed like free trade. And those parts have actually grown up in sort of a pseudo-capitalist kind of world, while the rest of the people in the country live this kind of like sheltered life, and they don't really have the ability, if they want, to actually like achieve more. And I feel like that's, for me, when it comes to capitalism, that's like my biggest argument for it is someone's ability to kind of reach up and grow through the economic circle if they so desire. But if not, they can stay where they're at, and
Right.
live whatever life they want. In a communist regime, that ability gets squandered, and everyone getting same amount, you don't have your ability to get any more, and then you get judged as, being evil and whatnot. That's kind of where I feel like we're at now, because anytime someone sees someone rich, at least in America, in my circle, they assume that they've like stolen from someone, or that profit equals theft. I feel like that viewpoint is just not it kind of breaks down in reality. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think as far as, big capitalism in America goes, when you get such a large business, and you start mass producing things, I think you're totally fine in the fact that you are using capitalism, you are climbing the steps on the ladder that were allowed for you to climb. I only have appreciation for that. My only problem in corporations and creating products like that is when you start outsourcing overseas and you start putting in foreign banks all your money, the way that you can hide it away from America so you don't have to start paying the taxes on it. That's my only real thing that I get upset when it comes to with people that have a lot of wealth. I also admire those that have a lot of wealth that take it to try to further humanity. We've discussed before about Elon Musk, but he's a weirdo. He's very eccentric. But I enjoy that. I don't think we have enough eccentric billionaires that are sending, cars to Mars. We need that. Like, we need someone that has, because I don't have the capital to do anything cool like that, but someone that has that capital needs to be helping. And, people want to criticize Bill Gates endlessly because, he, like, the microchip thing is a recent thing, but the fact that the Melinda Gates Foundation kind of thing going on, like, with, like, malaria, like, that's a humanitarian cause, and he has a lot of money. He actually donates a lot of it to different charities, and, you have to be a humanitarian if you have that much wealth, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
To repeat, yeah, like a lot of the big guys like J.P. Morgan and Vanderbilt, they would always donate a lot. Well, granted, that didn't excuse what they did, but yeah, that's a big element. Like buyers. But can you elucidate what the microchip thing was? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a recent thing. It's a real recent thing. So I don't know a whole lot about it. Abby was telling me about it more because she's more into the conspiracy theory kind of stuff. But, from conspiracy theory, you do start from fact, and you just go from there. But the facts are Bill Gates wants to create this new microchip thing that's implanted inside of you, that it has all your medical records on it. So basically, if you're in a car crash or something, you're in a car wreck and you're knocked out, unconscious, incapacitated, whatever hospital you're brought to can just go through the microchip that's in your arm or something and say, oh, this guy has this blood type, he has this thing, like, say if you don't have identification or something. And that sounds really useful on one end, but it also sounds like a breach of privacy and very scary. And, if you go into the tinfoil hat shit, kind of like nanobots controlling me and my blood, and they're going to eat my fucking brain, So that's where the tinfoil hat goes on it. But the base idea is you have your medical history on you all the time, even if you don't have documentation, paperwork, your ID or whatever.
Yeah, okay. I could definitely see, because that sounds kind of Orwellian if everyone is, like, documented.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I feel like, man, no matter what way we're going, we're all kind of going in that direction. Because look at England, for that matter. They have CCTV footage, like, everywhere that the police use to solve crimes, but at the same time, like, your whole life is documented, like, on screens and whatnot. And it is kind of a breach of privacy. Also, they have, like, this facial recognition software. So if you're walking by, your face gets scanned through, like, a database. I don't think they've actually implemented it, but they were talking about it, and the police were in some sense. But, like, it's kind of hard to explain why that's bad, but, like, just, like, your face is... Can you imagine just, like, being a normal citizen before all this, and just, like, the cops are like, hey, we're going to go investigate you for this crime, even though you're not related to it, and they go through your documents and whatnot. And they're basically doing that every time you walk across the street without your knowledge. And I don't know, it just seems kind of like a 1984 novel to me,
right.
In some sense.
I at this point, I've accepted that privacy is no longer a thing. I'm not like, I'm not being wild. I'm not like, fucking, I'm just gonna post my butthole online. Like, that's stupid, but, I'm on many databases. I'm in the governmental database. I'm in the state database. I'm in, my school's database. Like, if they want my information, they're gonna find it, if they really care to. It's not hard to find. They can look up anybody. But the big thing that gives me solace in it all, and I think this is the big thing a lot of people need to take away from it, is that you are not important enough for them to care about unless you do something bad. So, unless you have a lot of money or something they can take from you, they can frame you to take your money or something, you don't have to worry about it. Like, I make nothing a year, I make very little, and even if I do start making a decent amount when I'm older, I'm not going to be making millions and billions of dollars. Like, they're not going to, I'm not important enough, I guess, to go out of their way to whoever they are, deep state or individual hackers. Why would they care about me? You know. So I think that's a big thing a lot of people have to take away from it is that you're not as important as you think when it comes to being a target.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can empathize with those sentiments. I definitely agree with the privacy thing. I mean, that's just lost now in the information age. Like the Fourth Amendment's kind of like dead.
Yeah.
But I still feel like, even though like they're not important enough to care about, it's just like seems kind of fucked up to me. Like all your information and whatnot, because someone is in charge of that, and people are allowed, soul and whatnot is allowed to be abused and whatnot, and be like allowed to be corrupt. And that's like the whole idea. The state is allowed all this power and the state becomes corrupt. What if they start using it for, some sort of malicious action or whatnot? We don't have the power now to stop that. That's just kind of a scary thing. Although I kind of doubt if it will at this point. I don't know. We'll have to see where it goes. I feel like some great case will happen where information on the database was used in a malicious way and ends up causing like a lot of harm, like certain parents' families were notified that they're dead when they weren't, and then it'll be like a big court case. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Because usually all these things, the precedents for them are set up in like big law cases like this, and then we figure out how to go from there.
Oh, but, yeah, and a lot of it's going to be, deep underground inside governmental agencies. Like, remember the whole NSA thing, and like, with a bunch of other WikiLeaks stuff that came out and everything. But like, that was all heavy secret governmental stuff. So we'd only find out about it if there are any more whistleblowers, which might not be a thing. I'm pretty sure they're tightening restrictions ever since Snowden, but we're not going to know about it until it's too late. Is the thing, yeah. So because they're probably using it as a way to better sell things, better rig elections, better elect certain officials, so they can keep whatever they want going in inside of the government. Because it is an open democratic society, which means you can rig it. It's the same thing with capitalism. It's open, but you can easily rig it. If you have the backgrounds to it, and you have the database, and you have the money, you can kind of do whatever you want, as long as you were born into that power. And that translates to a lot of things in America. But as far as privacy stuff goes and using your information, we won't know about it until it's too late.
Yeah. I think, I definitely agree with that. It's definitely kind of sad to think about though in the long term.
Yeah, I mean it's really depressing, and the fact that, like you're saying, like a big scandal's probably going to happen, like another one, like the NSA I think was like the last big one that we heard about, Snowden and all that. But I think there's going to be another, and maybe even multiple more, definitely within our lifetime, as information becomes more valuable and more readily accessible. I think we're going to see some pretty cool stuff coming along the pipeline.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. All right, so I think we covered a good bit of topics here. This is another topic I wanted to talk about because I was just kind of so irate about this, and I was just like, what is this world? I'm talking about like the kind of state of YouTube that it's in now. Mm-hmm. I've just been looking like really shitty channels, like, Tanamoji and all that. She had like this reality TV show, and I looked into it, and it was just like the most bullshit thing in the world, and she's just like such a following of people, and she's just like this manipulative woman who's slave to her impulses, and I don't know, I just don't understand how people like it and whatnot. Her with the Jake Paul, the Paul brothers and all that, it just kind of saddens me, and I was wondering like if this is always the case, like back in time, like a certain person, like the majority always kind of conforms to the stupid, but I don't know, I feel like at one point, do you say like, I don't know, I just feel like right now we're worshiping idols that are just, superficial to some degree. I just wonder like if that will be different like at a certain time. Like would those kind of people be allowed to emerge in the 1700s or whatnot? It would be like, no, get the fuck out of here. Who are you? I don't know.
Well, I think...
What do you think about?
I think it faces the whole identity of being a celebrity in general. Because think about back to maybe even like someone like Elvis, like not too long ago, within recent memory, but still massive. He did music and that's very entertaining, but to the prudish older generation, because Elvis was, pelvic thrusting and stuff, was obviously very sexy and very against the grain. But he was still very superficial, still like very pretty, had a good voice, but he was very handsome, stuff like that. and a lot of people follow the pretty people on that. So, and that's just celebrity culture in general. But a difference that we have now is that the internet is mostly populated by children, and children have much less. I guess they're less picky about what they're gonna watch. And if Jake Paul is like, "Yo, turn up every day. If you're in my clique, you're in my clique, and you're cool if you're in my clique." Everyone's like, "Whoa, shit, we gotta watch Jake Paul because I want to be cool just like the other kids." And I feel like it's a compounding factor of you're in middle school and you see these things. I mean, it's just like, and there's also the draw of like reality TV, like you're saying, like parents. My parents watch reality TV, just because it's a fun thing to watch. It's a very brainless, mindless thing you can just drone on and have going. And so if it's someone pretty, you want to belong in the group. It's somewhat, the popular thing to do, so you want to be part of it, especially if you're young. It's really important. And the fact that it's just easy to watch. But that's celebrity and TV culture, and I never really got into that. Myself, I was more into genuine pieces of work, genuine programming that I thought was worth my time. But to a lot of people, that's the place to be because they value social status and social gatherings more than they do their own intellect, I guess, and appreciation of, say, an art or a medium. It's rather an experience and a being welcomed into a group.
Right. So almost in some sense, it's like the amount of the content overrules like the amount of effort it takes to produce it, right? So like the more shit you have, the more chance that our children are going to watch it in some sense.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you're facing the algorithm on YouTube, that's a whole different thing. But like YouTube, on the internet, you just have to produce a lot, And if you produce enough and enough people watch it, you get the views, you get boosted. And then someone like Jake Paul or Logan Paul, who is honestly pretty bland, they don't really do anything that interesting. But if, you're like, hey, 9-year-old kid, I'm the most watched guy on YouTube, you're cool if you watch me. And then the 9-year-old kid's like, oh shit, I gotta watch that guy because he's really cool. But, us 23, 24, 25-year-old guys and older, we don't fucking care. We're gonna watch what is actually genuinely good to us because we've developed taste over the years, developed our own kind of identity of what we feel like watching on this medium. But those that are very impressionable, children with iPads in the store, they don't care what they're watching, and they're going to watch the thing that their little friends want to talk about.
Yeah, I guess that is the case, but like, I don't know, it's just crazy, man, because like, even with Elvis, he could argue, I mean, like, sure, it was flash and all that, but he actually, like, did an art, and whether or not you like it, I mean, did put a lot of effort into and whatnot. These people, like, on YouTube are relevant and, very ubiquitous. I mean, like, they aren't really doing anything. Like, if you think about Tanner and all that, they're just like an image of superficiality. They're just like, look, I'm rich. I mean, it just pisses me off because, like, they don't have a fucking thing that they, like, do. It's just like you said, like, an idea of getting acceptance and, like, giving all these mass people just kind of like this content, but it's like of nothing. And I feel like that's kind of like the millennial thing, is this idea of the image of work rather than the work. It's kind of like superficiality to the extreme. Like you got the idea like the Fire Festival going on where you have like this idea of something that overrules the amount of substance to it, which actually comes out to be nothing, right? It's just, yeah, and I don't know, it's just bad. And I feel like if that's the case, I don't know, it just fucking sucks. I'm fucking like a bunch of 9-year-olds. If they go and worshiping Jake Paul, I feel like they're gonna have a rough time growing up in their 20s because it's gonna be like, why is my life like this? Why am I not rich? Why am I not banging women all the time? My life was suck. And then they end up becoming.
I get the strong feeling, at least since the 80s, maybe even the 70s, and probably earlier. I only used Elvis because he was the earliest like big notable thing that I could think of that would maybe impressionable people might be like, oh, well, I want to grow up to be like Elvis, sexy and cool, very rich, banging women all the time, doing whatever I want. And he does very little work because he just performs. I think the allure of being a performer, of being a celebrity, an actor, a musician, someone that seemingly makes money off of doing nothing, Money for Nothing and Chicks for Free? Like that song hits it really hard, where it's just like, it really does, where it's really just like, I want to be like that because that's easy, But people see it as easy, and it's a lot of it really isn't. As much as I dislike their content, I can fully recognize that people like Jake Paul and Tana Mongeau, or whatever her name is, Tana Jumanji, whatever their names are, they, I recognize that they have to put in effort to make their own image, in a certain way to impress people, and that they have to get the footage, and even if it's mindless, it's still work that's being put in, and there's a lot of background stuff going into it, but there's also a lot of background money, and that's the thing a lot of people lack when it comes to getting into industries. So a lot of famous people only got into it because they had a good connection or they had a lot of money, which a lot of the times that connection being their parents that had the money. Like Trump being one. His dad just gave him a lot of money because he had a lot of money. Billie Eilish is another one. She just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. That's because her brother was a really well-known producer of music, and he produced songs for her. And I don't know who all he produced for, but he's well known in the industry. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna make my sister's music now, and they put it out, and it immediately blew up because he had the connects, he had the money. But otherwise, who knows? Because I know people in Athens, very talented, but they're just staying in Athens because they don't have the connections, they don't have the money. And I think I kind of went on a tangent there, but I was basically saying people get there by a little bit of work, but a lot of luck. And it's idealistic. The false view of it all is that they put little work in, and they get a lot of payback for it. They get a lot of money for it, and I think it's been consistent in celebrity culture since as long as it's been around.
Yeah. I think I could definitely get what you're saying. I think one might not want to fall in this kind of cynic outlook where it goes on.
I can't hear you that well.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think one might not want to go into the trap of the cynic where they think work goes unnoticed and it's really a bunch of variables outside one's control that allow you to make it. And I think that is like a view I see a lot of people like face and whatnot. But I do think to some extent in the long term, like even after your lifetime, like good work does go noticed and whatnot. And I just feel like, to some extent, like popularity is not just that alone. It's just a bunch of variables you can't control. I think, something like, this is where I veer off, like Tana and shit, like even fucking watching the reality TV video of her, she doesn't like literally do anything. Like the whole premise of the drama was all centered around the fact that she couldn't wake up early enough in the morning. Like do this, shit. And that was like the thing that she wanted to do, but like she's such a slave to her impulses that she can't, and then she just blames everyone else to it. Whereas, you get like a boy band that everyone worship, like the Beatles, say, right? People are like, oh, just looking and all that. But I mean, they made some really amazing music. And I think what I'm trying to say is to some extent that that's probably a mixture of both to some degree. That is a good talent. And I think and this is too, like, you may be popular now, but in the long term, when history looks back in you, you'll probably be like not stand out in the crowd. You're not ubiquitous at all. Whereas the real people, actually get stood out. And that's kind of the real, mediator for what is good or not is probably history. Because I feel like, 20 years from now, a lot of these people will be shit. But whereas someone in YouTube, a lot of skill into it and put a lot of effort in, who didn't like chase the views, but, just did what they wanted, got a lot, is looked upon as like a good artist.
Yeah.
Although, when I say that, I can't really think of anyone right now. I used to be able to say Filthy Frank, iDubbbz, and, H3 some regard, but I mean, I'm thinking of all the big names right now, and they're all just shit right now. I think YouTube's took a real plummet in terms of real good.
I think YouTube is akin to the music industry in the fact that you have all these different genres constantly putting out content, whether you know them or not, with variable amounts of following. And there will be stars of each of those, but the biggest stars of each of those categories per se are the ones that are really going to remember. Like even you don't have to like metal at all, say metal music, but you know who Metallica is. In general, that's a metal band, and that's all you really need to know. you don't like pop that much, but you know who Michael Jackson is, you know? You don't watch gaming videos, but you'll probably know who PewDiePie is, you know? And I think it's things like that where you have to rise to the absolute top of your category to really be remembered as important in the industry. And I think YouTube is its own industry because it's pretty unique in the fact that it exists and that everyone can make their own things on it, and that it's such a multimedia platform that has so much money, advertising, recognition pumped into it. I think, Frank, although he might not be remembered as like the end all be all of YouTube per se, he probably will be remembered as this guy was big for a lot of people growing up, and it was kind of the apex of the cringy, ironic kind of meta humor that YouTube was allowed to have in this era of time. So say like you compare that to a smaller band, like say, the Clash, like, Sex Pistols, like he'll be remembered as kind of like the punk renaissance, I guess, of YouTube, if you want to compare it to a larger, longer industry like music. And I think that's a good way of looking at it.
I think it's a big point to note too that music, a music video gets a lot more clicks on it than rather another video, because it's just a song and you constantly listen to it. That's another factor of people just generating stuff that's not music, and they kind of lose no matter what. Because I have heard that mentioned before about music. But yeah, that is a definite point.
I mean, I was just comparing it to have like kind of a baseline of who we would remember from YouTube and why, and that's just because they're the cream of the crop of their certain category on the platform. And music being on YouTube is only natural because, like I said, they're very comparable. Because you already have the rankings, you already have the system set up, and it's the newest way that people get content, whether that be instructional videos, cooking, comedy, music, anything. It's one of the new age ways of doing it, and TV is a dying platform, radio is a dying platform. Streaming and YouTube are really the only places you can get good content as a young person nowadays.
Yeah. I just feel like, in general, I think there's something happened to it where everything's just wrapped in plastic, no matter what. It's just like, even when I hear ads and stuff, I like hate the ads so much now that I want to not buy the product, because it's just such a dissonance now. Like, if I think about ads from the 90s or whatnot, they were at least tried to be not trying to empathize with you, but just be out there and say, hey, we're selling a product. Now it's all in your face. Oh, we're trying to do this to help the community and all that. And I just see that bored. I can't tell if it's just me getting older or not, but I just like feel a very big distaste for most of the content. Not even with YouTube, let's just say in general. When I hear like people talk on the radio one, I just feel like there's just an amount of superficiality these days, and I feel like it's just kind of suffocating to some degree.
I agree with that, actually. I agree with that pretty hardcore, because I think the way that advertising has gone in the past, say, 20 years, I guess since after 9/11, I think might be like the big change in the way that people advertise things, at least in America, is that, especially right now during a crisis, you're hearing a lot of, we care about you, buy Charmin, wipe your ass, we care, like, we're the Care Bears, shit like that. But I mean, like, but the way that they advertise products now is it doesn't really matter, because if someone wants to buy your product, they're going to buy your product, Because
right.
the fact that we have superstores like this, we can go in, look at every single product that we want, and even though they put all this money into advertising and all this money into making their box look the most attractive, all it comes down to really nowadays is price. And the fact that Amazon exists, who can undercut literally everyone, sometimes even Walmart, who used to be the main undercutter competitor for everyone. The fact that a lot of people are going based on price because we now see the true quality of products now. We don't care about the product anymore, because people are going to buy it whether they like it or not based on how much it is. They're now looking to see, if I'm putting this money into this business that I'm going to do anyway, is it at least going to go to a decent cause? And to me, I'm not saying that matters to me by any means. I buy things to eat them, to use them. I don't fucking care what the business does. I still love Chick-fil-A. I don't care that they hate gay people. They have good chicken. But I mean, it's true. I like them because they have good chicken. But but there's a lot of sympathy nowadays, and a lot of people pretending like they care and they want to not go out of their way to do anything, but they want to say that, oh, I bought this box of cornflakes. This specific brand of cornflakes said that they're going to donate 3 cents to a little Jimmy whose butt has an itch. Like, that's kind of epic. I can help little Jimmy with his butt itch with just buying cornflakes. But, like, you just bought the cornflakes because you're hungry, bro, and it was cheap, you know? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
In the world. I mean, yeah, it's this false sense of empathy. Like, that's not like the way you act in the universe. It's to like give. It's this act of philanthropy. I mean, like, what are you trying to do? Like, you're sending me a false image, and it just comes across so transparent in that I'm just like disgusted. Rather, it's like, these cornflakes I'm gonna buy, right? I love them. But I hear this ad, and they're just trying to sell me. Oh, look, we're helping little Jimmy so much. That's why we exist. You should do that. And I'm like, well, fuck. I might find another brand of cornflakes.
Fuck little Jimmy. I want his ass to itch, bro. I'm gonna buy him some Charmin.
Man, if you know little Jimmy, you go up to him like, hey man, have these cornflakes company helped you out? I'm like, fuck no. And then you find out that they're lying.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's like the false sense of you're helping when the fact of the matter is they're not even helping most of the time. So it's interesting though. Like I was saying, like the undercutting on prices and just the fact that Amazon and Walmart are, monoliths in this industry, and it's just not possible to care about companies like Dove is a company that I think it does a very good job at running the empathy card, mostly because they sell to women a lot. Dove do not really sell to men. They sell chocolate and they sell soap and they sell women's soap, and they try to sell their chocolate targeted towards women. They're very feminine ads. And I think that's really smart, and it works really well for women because a lot of women have more empathy than men generally. So, but Dove has been doing that religiously for as long as I can remember. That's a company that has been very good at it. And I think like baby food, that's another one that, baby products, because that also targets women. I think it's really hard to empathetically sell something to a man, although I'm certain there are businesses that are trying it. I just don't see that as commonly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like the whole show Mad Men was about like businesses, ad agencies in the 50s, and the housewife was a big market towards all this stuff back then. Yeah, right. They were the different empathy card. But I mean, to this point now, I feel like there's this element where they've lost it, and just like, all right, just talk about your product, what you're doing, and whatnot. Don't try to sell me this false message of that you exist for good, and that your products, help this certain poor person in Africa and whatnot. That's just like a lie. And, at some point subterfuge to try to convince me that. That's what gets me angry about it. It's the case with celebrities too. Celebrities I feel like they're in debt to society, and their like constant image now is trying to show that, hey, I'm poor too, or I'm trying to help out these people, or I got here because of my own self-worth, my acumen, yeah, I'm rich, but I try to donate, and not even donate, but it's like they're trying to relate back to the poor people because they feel like they're when people view them as rich, they feel like they're bad now because that's just the way the world works in some sense, and their whole image is basically trying to convince them that they're not rich and not who they are. And it's like, oh, it's so stupid.
Right, I think that's a really good point on celebrity stuff. I want to hit back on a little bit of the corporation and advertising stuff first, though, is that I hate those commercials that you're talking about where it's like they just show like a beautiful field. There's like a lady walking through a field, and a guy with a really smooth voice is like, we sent 20,000 teddy bears to dying children in Ethiopia. Like, okay, and the advertisements for like, like a fucking lawnmower or something. Like, that has nothing to do with it. Why do I care? Show me what your product is like. And I agree, I hate those ads, and I have ad blocker turned off. I don't watch TV. I very, very rarely listen to radio, and I have Spotify Premium, so I hear and see very little advertisements nowadays. But the ones I do see, say if I'm, just somewhere that has a TV on, I still see those, and I agree. I don't get them as often as others, I guess, since I go out of my way to make sure I don't have them, but they are very annoying and very confusing when they're on. But I think you could really hit it home with the celebrity thing about when you have a lot of money, people either want that money from you or they see you as somewhat corrupt because, everyone knows that greed can corrupt and money can corrupt. So, trying to pretend like you're one of the people is really a way to save face, especially nowadays where everything's online. It's really hard to find humanity, I guess, from a really rich person that lives on the other side of the nation that has, hundreds of thousands of dollars more than you. Like, why do I care about this person? And it's because they're still human, apparently.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. And another point I think too is a big factor in all of this, the superficiality, is the humanity. And I think it has something to do with the internet. And cause we grew up in the age where it like hit its most fruition. I think it exploded in the early 2000s. But, to some degree, I feel like it has made people isolated, and you don't just have crowds where people hang out anymore, like at the mall or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like it's just because whatever your self-interests are, you can find that within your own little world in your phone, like your music and whatnot, that no one else can really relate to. So rather than trying to get a group of people, talk about stuff, you can find it online and you end up isolating and losing that real contact. And, I feel like that internet contact, talking to people on stuff on the net is not parallel to the actual contact. I feel like that is a big element, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree on that a lot, especially if you look on anonymous boards like 4chan or, I mean, to a degree, Reddit, because, you can make an account and pretty much stay anonymous. People make, alternate accounts so they do not have any of their real life stuff on it. But places
Have you
like,
actually been on a 4chan board before? Because I can never figure that shit out.
oh yeah, so I mean, I go every now and then because there's some cool, funny video game memes that get posted there, but, you see a lot of shit on that site. Even just trying to avoid the bad shit, you still see crazy stuff going on, people saying all these different things and being just horrible to each other for no reason beyond the fact that they can, and that they're probably taking out their own frustrations and whatever's happening in their real life on a random person for real no reason. But that's the culture there, is that everyone's angry and toxic, even in the least toxic of places, like on the animal board. Sometimes I'll go on there, and people are still just yelling at each other, like still angry, posting whatever they want. And I think like places like 4chan, those anonymous boards are the apex of people, especially young men, that have lost touch with, other humans, and they're kind of just like, this is my cesspool, and this is me to freely do whatever I want here. It's kind of just like a rag doll they just throw around, and that rag doll is other posters because they don't care, because this place is a wasteland. And so I agree that the internet and having our only solace be the internet for a lot of, especially young men. I mean, I don't know how it is for young women, but the men are generally the ones posting because they're the ones that's where they go. I can see it being very, very damaging, and you lose a lot of humanity that way. Like you're saying, people don't really hang out, in like big groups much anymore, especially now with COVID and all that going on. I don't know how any of that's going to be going on, and I can only see this problem getting worse for those kinds of people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, to be honest, I guess we don't have a whole lot to say with the woman, too much with the groups. But, I can observe stuff with my sister and my mom, too, and I feel like that is, there is a little bit of a connection between that. But I feel like, males, when they're hurt, have the ability to, like, when they do bad, they do that by aggression. That is a perfect example on the internet. It's just to seep out and try to punch someone else on there. But the reality is, there's someone behind that comment too, and you end up hurting them, and they end up like, oh, what the fuck? Why did they tell me all this? And, they feel hurt too.
Yeah, but like in real life, in person, they wouldn't be doing that, at least nowhere near as much, Like if you're just angry and you go talk to like your friends at the mall or something, they're like, oh man, that sucks. Let's go get a fucking, donut or whatever. And it's like, it's okay because you have friends, but if you were on your computer by yourself, festering with your thoughts, laying in your own filth, on the internet, on like places like 4chan, it's really easy to just stay where you are and stay angry, and it's an awful continual cycle. So I mean, that relates to a lot of other issues, but if you were just looking at it from an internet perspective, it's not helpful, and it's definitely not healthy for these kinds of people.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I wonder how it is for women though. Now we talked about it.
I'm not sure.
Because I feel like they have their own echo chambers too and whatnot. I mean, yeah, it's definitely interesting. And we can observe it, but I guess we don't really have an ability to change it at this point. It's going to continue in whatever direction it may be. Maybe there'll be like, may get to the point where we like no longer have social interaction in the real world, but it's just like all through a device. And then somehow that we attribute that to like real human connection. And then we can no longer beat up an anonymous person online. Cause to be fair, we're losing that ability of the crazy internet of like 4chan, even Reddit to this point where people just like say a bunch of crazy ass shit, unfiltered, no censor from like any government or internet authority. Cause like, it's hard for companies to do that now because Reddit, if they have like a whole board of like hitting on black people, they're going to get in trouble from that from a public amount. Advertisers start pulling their sponsors. So in some sense, it's like kind of being corporatized and, not allowing that pure like, primal like conscious of just emotion, stream of conscious to come out. I feel like it's kind of now being, trying to like section off and being suitable. But I feel like that in some senses, and will never be truly suitable. But yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I said a lot there.
No, it makes sense, and that's why I used 4chan as more of an example of what we were getting at with, broken men being angry online, because I feel like places like Reddit, like you're saying, has become more corporatized, it's becoming safer, and that's not a place guys can really go to, or people can't really go to do that anymore. But places like 4chan, you definitely still can, and that's like might be even one of the few last bastions that isn't like a personal blog or something that you can just be like, I'm going to just spew hate and be the worst person possible, and it's just accepted here because that's what it's like here. It's like walking into like a really dimly lit bar. There's like a billion bikers and everyone's yelling racial slurs at each other.
Yeah. And I don't even be like racial too, or just hate. It might just be like crazy random, like, oh fuck, I don't know. It's like 4chan is like they almost have their own like secret language that I don't understand when they communicate with the people.
Even on like random boards that I'm on, like I'm just looking at like a thing because there's like identification threads sometimes on like bugs on the animal board, and if I can get it, I'll help. But even on those, people are like using their own certain lingo that they use from the site. And I don't frequent it. I go every now and then, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell this poster's talking about. But like, but it's got its own culture. It's crazy, and it's just some things are just accepted there. Like, yeah, you can post porn, you can say whatever you want, and it's fine as long as it's not like these three things. Anything goes. So
what are the three? You like post something malicious onto like a person you up?
Well, it depends on the board. Like some things, like just general rules for this board. Don't post this, but mainly you don't post like child porn. You don't post like something that is going to like actively endanger someone. Like you shouldn't. Like mods will remove that shit if they see it, because like this is actually like anything that's legitimately illegal. You cannot have on the site. But sometimes, and they'd go down real quick. But people, I've heard of people posting huge like image dumps of child porn like on threads. They go down like as quick as they come up, like real fast. But it's people still try, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I always see that get brought up like on the internet, especially with the dark web too. Because one of the main reasons I didn't go on 8chan on there was because a lot of people were posting like stuff like that, and like I can't be on the same like site that does that. But I feel like child porn is just a weird thing that pops up every now and again. I mean, it's very disgusting, but I feel like at least for the internet is very bad for it because then you feel like people who somehow have this weird niche taste, and then you somehow be able to like connect with them and like share this stuff. Yeah.
What's wild is of all like the child porn cases you hear about like having child pornography, is that the reason the way they find it is on their computer. It's never they never seek this person out to look through their stuff. They never like reroute back through their through their server to find what's on their files. It's always, we arrested this guy on suspicion, and then we looked through his stuff. So obviously he was doing something IRL in person that was shady. But there's hundreds of thousands of these dudes, or women, I mean people, who knows, that have lots of stuff on their computer, or they have these interests, and how, that's a really kind of picky thing. And now even pedophiles, people like that you heard about MAP? You heard about that?
Oh yeah, I heard that shit. Yeah, especially with this whole like sexual the new renaissance for all sex. Like if you have a sexual preference, it's okay. Yeah, but
Right.
with it on Twitter, that's basically what they're saying, right? Like
Yes,
I should
yeah.
be allowed.
They're trying to make it valid, and it's wild. It's just all crazy, and that's a thing that's rampant everywhere on the internet, and even on surface level web, like I said on 4chan. I mean, it goes down real fast, but every now and then things will be posted, and people are like immediately shut it down. I don't know how common that is. Probably not very common since the mods are very good at it, but places like dark web, whatever. If you go through Tor, Onion browser, whatever. You can find it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's crazy. The fact that you can find it is wild.
yeah, I think too though, you mentioned a good point. Like I feel like if someone's constantly acting on that urge, that they're gonna do something in real life or try to act on it, and they will get caught,
Right.
regardless of what you do on the internet. But yeah, especially with the map stuff. Interesting. I hear a lot of shit too with the zoo files. Have you heard of that dark term?
Zoo files, or they just like have sex with animals.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Ugh.
It's like, and they kind of use that same mirror as like, well, I'm just sexually attracted to it, and I should be like, allowed. And people are like, no, that's not right. A lot of the maps, like, this is wrong in society, and I wouldn't act on it. But if it was allowed, I would, if the age length, or the what's the word for it, the age of consent was lowered, I would act on it. It's really fucked up. Yeah, too with NAMBLA. NAMBLA was this thing in the 90s. I remember like looking into it, which was like National Association for Men Boy Love, and it was these people trying to do that basically back then, but they all got pretty much accosted by the people, and distaste basically brought them down and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's good that society still reaches out towards that as like a bad morally thing, and I feel like no matter how bad like society will degrade to some point, it will never get to the point where they allow that certain behavior, because it's very it violates so much the child to such a degree just to gratify your urges that I feel like people just can't align that up and say this can be morally acceptable in some scenarios. But yeah,
Right, and I think it's good that we maintain that, at least in Western culture. I don't know about other places. Age of consent is very low, but at least in America, we maintain that because we understand cognitively children do not understand the full implications of sexual relations before before puberty, pretty much. And even then, they're still too young to understand the full later on ramifications of what will happen if they are put into this certain situation. And them agreeing to something like that isn't necessarily them agreeing to it. It's them being pressured into it and just understanding that that's what they have to do. It's almost like, your parents being like, you're going to go do this thing, like I'm sending you to summer camp or something, and you're like, okay, that sounds cool. And your parents at best, but like, it's a similar thing. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, of course not, but I'm saying as a child, you will perceive it as this is a thing I have to do. This is a thing I'm going to do. It's not a thing I want. Like, it might not be a thing I necessarily desire or necessarily want to do, but it's what I'm doing. And they don't understand the full, this will destroy my mind later, so being an adult, being the one that, say if you are one that is attracted to that, you're trying to make it become a thing, you have to recognize that that's gonna fuck this child up. Their entire life is pretty much over.
Yeah, definitely. And it may not be in the fact that it'll fuck them up later, that they just don't know what is going on at this point,
Exactly, and they'll recognize it later, and it'll be awful, The
whole concept of grooming, I guess. I've never even heard that term before that Onion Son or whatever the hell is Onision's name came up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, taking like a younger age girl and pretty much preying on that instinct to get them to go in a relationship with you just because they don't really know what's what in society, and you're just basically forcing them to be with you. And I feel like to some degree they like allow that to happen at a younger age. I don't really know why, but that's why it's considered wrong and shit. But then with the sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say Onision's thing was that he didn't actively have sex with them when they were younger, but he brought them in to his house and looked after them when they were 14, and when they turned 18, that's when they had sex with him.
Right. Knowing though that that this would happen if he did this, so I guess that's what considered grooming is.
Right, yeah. It was grooming for sure, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's another, like, part of YouTube. There's, like, a whole element to him that he gains a lot of notoriety and infamy, but at the same time he becomes very popular for all the shit he gets. And I feel like his whole account has thrived through all this stuff that he does and people reacting to it. And his image is actually grown, and become a part.
I mean, any publicity is good publicity, you know, and the problem with, the thing about Onision is he kind of runs like a cult of personality kind of thing. And when Chris Hansen was investigating him, he referred to it as that as well, where it's kind of like he is hypnotically charismatic to a certain kind of person, and that kind of person is going to follow him. And even during all this controversy, even though they're obvious, he's been grooming, he's a terrible person, he's manipulative, he's, you know, a little psychotic, people still religiously follow him. And he has like a certain Discord channel where it's like his like closest, you know, like 30 followers or something, and a lot of them are women, and a lot of them are like, oh, you can't do any wrong, you know. It's crazy. It really, and it's almost, it's a cult, like, almost. It's kind of like Manson, like kind of like the serial killers and stuff like that, where they're like, I'm just gonna sway these people to do what I want, and they'll love me no matter what, because for some reason I have this hypnotic pull to me. And he's very akin to those kinds of people, and it's crazy that that's still a thing, I guess, in 2020. You know, that people, I guess it's coming from broken homes and terrible backgrounds, so you see this something in this guy, I don't know what. But I think it's very similar to that, and it's crazy that that's still a concept nowadays, I guess.
Yeah. I was watching that video by him, and what was the end of it? It was like, this all happened because I got fucked by my dog when I was a kid.
Yeah, when you and I were watching that, yeah.
I thought this was a joke. I can't believe he actually,
that was his ploy. Yeah, that was part of his ploy to look like he was insane, so he could, I think, plead for insanity when he inevitably goes to trial. But then he made a video before he went to trial saying, oh, those were all lies and you guys all fell for it. Like, dude, if you're going to go in on the fact that you're insane to try to plead insanity, you need to double down until your case is done. You can't give up halfway through, because that just shows that you were competent the whole time and that you were liable to your crimes.
Yeah, good point. And I feel like, too, like, a lot of channels that, like, pretty much generate their content by making fun of them, or somewhat at fault too, because they're basically kind of like H3H3 and iDubbbz to some degree is they became popular by attacking other people, right? Rather than having no much of their own content. Like H3H3 really had nothing in that regard. iDubbbz, I would say iDubbbz may not be the case because they did the bad unboxing and shit, but at some point, that is a big part of YouTube, is just attacking people that are stupid to some degree. And I feel like it's wrong in some cases because it makes you feel like you are superior intellectually and morally. And you can really pick out, like, really anyone and just find on the internet, oh man, fuck these people, I would never do that, blah, blah, blah. And just kind of viewing from that angle and, like, while not being in their lives, kind of attack it from that perspective. And I feel like that is another kind of bad part of YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with I think the main point is the moral superiority thing. Because like earlier we were talking about advertising and how the companies even want to seem like they're morally, representable, I guess. They're like, we have good morals as a company, but obviously that's a spineless, faceless company. That's not one person. But it's a lot easier to attack a single person for being morally corrupt or, being like, well, I wouldn't do that. It's not even the direct attacking of a person directly. It's not the direct attack on a person. Like Leafy just attacked people. That's all he did. But iDubbbz does moral superiority. So I think that's kind of where it's leaning, because how we feel is becoming a much more important thing as people go to more therapy, as people become more, introspective on not only their person, but also their sexuality and all of these different things and what they do and don't agree on that they see online. And there's so much content, there's so much things to look at. So it seems like morality and humanity are the main two things we're trying to find in all of this.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like that's another thing, like, I never heard about when I was growing up, but we hear the term mental health thrown around so much now. I feel like that's because it's declining so much. And people have, like, all these mental issues and whatnot, and they're trying to, solve them. I feel like, well, I can only observe it from a very, like, loose perspective or very far away, but I can just see, it's very apparent how much that is rising now. We hear people talk about their depression and whatnot so much more than, when I was growing up, or even when I look back in time, reading through books and stuff, you don't hear people put as much pressure onto that. And I feel like, that could be with YouTube, being more introspective, but also being in a state of decadence where, we don't do a whole lot in our life, and thus we feel depressed from it, and thus we try to say, oh, there's something wrong here, and, try to look into it and whatnot.
Right. I agree on that. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons you don't hear a whole lot about, say, mental health back in the day. I mean, it wasn't well diagnosed at all. They didn't know what it was. There was ailments of different reasons. B, it was probably seen as, like, weak to admit that you feel bad or something like that, or, like, that you're less useful to society or you're a dreg. You might just be put in the mental hospital and experimented on, So that stuff's kind of scary. So there's a lot of hiding it. There's a lot of understanding what it was. And then I think there just weren't. I think those are the main two things: is not knowing what it was and being scared of admitting something like that. Like even basic urges, like being horny. Like say for example, for the longest time, it was just like we don't know how this works. We don't know why this works. Or like remember the 3 humors or is it 4 humors idea where they're like you have different. We didn't know what caused disease until somewhat recently.
Right.
People thought bloodletting was how you got rid of disease. And fuck if we knew. Fuck if we knew what the hell depression was. If we didn't know how to stop a bacteria. So I mean, they just didn't know about it. But now that we do know about it and more people are recognizing it, we also have declining social interactions like we did, back in the day, but where people were forced to constantly interact with each other because that's the only way you're able to do anything. Now we can text or call or anything through an online medium. And I think with, being inside, everyone having to be home now, it's only going to exemplify that and make it that much worse. And there's also the fact that it's trendy. Having depression, it is a trendy thing. And it's good that it's accepted that people have mental illness and that we need to help them and they can go to therapy and we have medication for it. That's all good, but it's bad that it's become popular.
Right.
I don't have depression myself. I don't have mental illness, but if I want to seem like super popular in certain rings, I might you could pretend a little bit. Oh, I'm a little sad today. I have mental depression. Like, no, I don't. But
right. It's currently in today's society to have such elements. And again, I referenced that fucking Tana Moji shit when she was talking about, oh, I have depression and all this. This is why. And basically use it as pretext, to excuse her actions.
Right.
Also, you can't, if you're constantly abusing drugs like Adderall or marijuana, even to some degree, you're going to be in constant states of depression. But that's you yourself knowing that, putting yourself in a chemically imbalanced situation, whereas, let's just say common Joe just feels depressed for no reason, and is not doing anything like that, that's something that, needs some more review. But yeah, I guess with, anything growing up like that or anything becoming more popular, people will abuse the terminology. But you are very right in the fact that, we had no idea. In the 1950s, we would just have really fucked shit up. We had no idea how to do it, and we just operate on people, give them a lobotomy. See how they interact, they started stop screaming for a little bit. Oh, I guess that's okay. So let's just give everyone in this whole ward a lobotomy, see what happens.
Yeah.
An ethical constraints on the doctors and whatnot. Yeah, man. But yeah, cool. I feel like we went over a lot. Yeah, I feel like we got enough to cut up something here. Yeah, man.
I agree. Yeah.